Have you ever lost something, or maybe double stacked on something and bought it twice just because you forgot that you had it in the first place?
Annie, har du sett mina sockar?
Well, there is a solution for that. Get yourself organized. But we're not going to talk about how I organize my dresser or my closet or my Blu-ray collection in this video. I don't think anyone is here for that anyways. This is what we're going to talk about, of course. How I organize my graphic novel collection. And hopefully this video can give you some advice on how to arrange your own comic book collection as well as give it a nice aesthetic look. So when it comes to my collection, it is in a constant flux and I am changing around on my shelves constantly because each time that I read a bunch of my books, I reevaluate them and thinking about whether if I'm gonna keep them or sell them. So how can you approach this with arranging your books? I actually mix a lot of stuff when it comes to how I try to make it look like this. So let me break it down for you. Tip number 1. Do not let the alphabet constrain you. I can see in a lot of videos that people are arranging their books by company and then they go by the alphabet. But I do not let that constrain me all the time. Certainly in one particular area when it comes to the DC Rebirth Deluxe editions. When it comes to the DC Rebirth line, you have a nice arrange of books with white spines, unless you talk about Batman by Tom King, which later 2 volumes are black spines. And since if we would go by alphabetical order, our Batman would break up these row of white spine books. So I simply put my Batman books at the end of the DC Rebirth Deluxe hardcovers. It's not alphabetical, but it looks way better on the shelf. Tip number 2, I go format and then chronological. A lot of people want to go chronological, no matter what format the books are. So in that way it'll be easier to know which books to grab next whenever you do a long readathon of a character or a team. Well, I sort of do that, but I order them first by format and then chronological. So to make it a nice line with the books all in the same height, and then either they go up or down depending on how I've ordered the smaller books first up to the bigger ones or vice versa. You can go either way. Because in my opinion it gets a bit noisy when you get all of these different heights next to each other. So I rather flatline it. I guess you can say that. Third point, shelf margins. I know it is probably not something that a lot of people think about, but when it comes to all of us that has a collection that exceeds 1 bookshelf and you now have 2, of course I preferably think it's a nice look when you have more of the same bookshelf, because then it looks more aesthetically pleasing, as well as the shelving will add up right next to each other. So when it comes to the Kallax, of course, you don't have the option to switch the height for any of your bookshelves, but they are more sturdier. I went with the Billy, as you can see here, which is basically the opposite of the spectrum, as a lot of people have the black Kallax shelf, and here we have the white Billy with the white Augsburg doors. A lot of people ask me what kind of shelves I do have, so there you go. These are standard IKEA Billy shelves. But on the point of the shelf margins, when it comes to my collection, I don't only collect the DC and Marvel Omnibus and the standard hardcovers, which is pretty much 2 sizes of books, but I also collect manga books from Dark Horse and other companies, and I also collect the library editions that comes from Dark Horse as well. And those are a different height altogether. You can see that I've arranged so that 2 of the bookshelves on the right are higher up on the bottom shelf, so to keep my library editions from Dark Horse, and above that I simply leveled the scales by having the smaller manga books on top. My fourth suggestion is color code when possible. We have some companies in this comic book hobby that is more aesthetically pleasing with their book designs than others. Some that has standard solid colors, and some others that gives each and every book a unique look. So when it comes to image, for example, we have a lot of deluxe hardcovers that are printed with either white spines or black spines. So I of course arrange them together next to each other, and that is to give it sort of a yin-yang feeling to it. Tip number 5. Don't break the flow. And what I talk about when I say don't break the flow, I'm talking about whenever you have a long run of a comic book series like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by IDW or their Transformers run that goes a long way and are also beautifully collected and aesthetically pleasing with their spines. So those books are constant and don't break aesthetic-wise. So you want these books to continue in a row, no matter how long these runs actually are going to be in the end. So you want them to continue on to the next shelf, of course, if you have more than one shelf with your collection. But you want it to continue into the next row as to not break and say that this is where the next shelf begins and this is where this one ends. You don't want to do that. Instead, you want to push it through and give the illusion that it is a one solid unit and that just it keeps on going. Because otherwise, if you just break it right there in the middle and goes to the next row, I think it looks better like this. This last one is sort of an overall advice so that you won't buy anything twice. This may sound a bit strange, but have all your books on display. I store all of my collected editions within these 4 bookshelves behind me, and it is all in the good purpose to not make the honest mistake to buy something twice. The situation of buying something twice is interesting because for that moment to occur, you've obviously forgotten that you have the book. You probably didn't remember that because you didn't read the book in the first place. And maybe why you didn't read it in the first place is because you had to store it somewhere else or behind some books because you didn't have the space to keep them all. So make sure that you have room for everything in your collection to be displayed so that it will not be neglected in that way. I read somewhere that if it's not on display and it's kept away like in your closet or anything, it's hoarding. But I think that's a bit too harsh. But my advice here is arrange your books so that all of them are visible in your bookshelf. It is of course just the spine that helps a long way. And my last tip number 7. Arrange your book numbers from right to left. Okay, no, don't do that. So that's how I organize and arrange my books. I hope that you could take something good out of this one, and there is more of this coming on the channel. So I hope you will like this video, subscribe and hit the bell so that you won't miss out whenever the next video comes out. So this is how I organize my graphic novel collection. Thanks so much for watching and see you in another video. Bye bye. Smile, buddy. You're on YouTube. Yeah. Yeah, he likes that one. Hmm.